Welcome to the Grace Space, a transmission for the sovereign soul.
So your biophotonic light, we are literally glowing. You are literally glowing light because of your chemical reactions that create electricity. Every time oxygen is burnt in your cells and glucose and all the little chemical reaction, it gives off a weak biophotonic light. So so it started me down after years, after a couple years and writing my book about the obelisk. I go, well, this it does biophotonic too, the Aswan granite. And now think about the inside of the Great Pyramid, where it has several layers of Aswan granite, the same granite, the red Aswan granite, and then a sarcophagus in the center of the thing. And then it was covered with limestone, which is inert, like non-conductive. The limestone that was originally on the outside was not, so it didn't let electricity out. It was
Right.
keeping it in. And now there's a structure under it. I go, what does a biophoton do? Why would anybody want a biophoton? And so we happen to have biophotonic centers around the United States. I don't know, a few dozen of them, where it's a therapy and it is extremely beneficial to bask in biophotons. In order to make the lumens brighter from me and you,
Uh-huh.
so it's pain.
Pain.
If I poked you with a poke, for that second, you'll become an order of magnitude brighter.
Well, that's a bit like with the plants, right? When they could
Yes.
measure the light coming off of plants and they would tear a leaf, it would go, right?
Yes. That's
So
exactly
that's
right.
why they tortured you.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, real quick before we begin, if this content matters to you, you're warmly invited to subscribe to this channel, to like this video, to leave a comment, or all three. I read all the comments, and your engagement is really important because when you engage, it tells YouTube to push this content out to more people who would find value in it. Now that I understand this, I engage a lot more with the channels that are important to me because I know it really matters. Thanks for listening. Here we go. Welcome back to the Grace Space. So, yesterday I had another amazing conversation with Tony Rodrigues. He was back for his second appearance in the Grace Space. And I gotta say, we are entering a world here in this conversation most people never even imagined, a world where consciousness, water, crystal structure, magnetic harmonics, and ancient architecture all intersect in ways that reveal the deeper nature of reality itself. Tony is known for, in most of the world of disclosure for his testimony and his extraordinary autobiographical trilogy. But in this conversation, you're going to meet another side of Tony, the researcher, the tinkerer, the investigator of hidden technologies. And what I find absolutely fascinating, this is the man who has spent the last decade reverse engineering the fragments of ultra advanced systems that he once directly experienced. Tony shows us how obelisks, right? Those obelisks, right? Quartz, water, sound, and human intention form a coherent architecture, not mythological, not symbolic, but extremely functional. This is real, concrete stuff here. You're going to hear him walk us step by step through the physics of piezoelectricity, charge collapse, ultrasonic harmonics, and biophotons, and then show how all of it was used across civilizations, ancient and modern, often in ways hidden from public awareness. Surprise, surprise, not. This episode is not about speculation, all right? This is evidence, experiment, direct measurement, and the rediscovery of what human beings and human consciousness are actually capable of. If you've ever sensed that you're far more powerful than you've been told, well, you were right. That intention is not a metaphorical thing, that water is living intelligence, that ancient structures were technologies You're going to feel very at home in this conversation. So let's step into it. Here's my conversation with Tony Rodrigues. So I'm excited. This is like a whole other side of you that, it's been tantalizing. I've heard like snatches here and there when you start to talk about tech and you start to talk about all these different projects you're working on. And I'm always like, go back. I want to know what do you mean about that? What do you mean? And like the obelisk, the object that is behind you, which we can see on the screen, is fascinating. And I've seen obelisks my whole life, but I didn't understand what they were. And it turns out this is a whole world. So I would love to know, like, how did you get interested in this?
It was the people I hung out with. And so people that began to contact me to do shows like this with you were very interested. You're very interested. I've already learned a lot from you. Just us chatting off camera for 5 minutes. You learn. I would have never otherwise met you if I hadn't come forward with my testimony, right? And so
Yeah.
you're one of many, of hundreds of people that I would have never met that are very interesting. And I've picked up things, like you ran into my information in my books because you're somebody that is of a mind that doesn't reject that information, right? So people that are curious about things because you have your own kind of awareness that the official account of everything isn't everything. And so people are still curious and they run into me. And through your own experience, you've come up with own evidence and your own technology, if you will. And so hanging out with people for the last 10 years since I've gone public has really stoked my curiosity. And then coupled with my own efforts, I'm constantly researching what I remember and what I went through. I'm constantly doing it. I think it's a big deal. Any shred of proof proves the next thing and the next thing. And after so long, the technology part of it. But anyhow, hanging out with people, Dan Willis in particular, and when he and I did a show and we talked on a Zoom call at length about Vogel crystals.
Yes, I heard that interview.
And I love that. The thing about Dan is that it's a very, when you talk about crystals, all of a sudden it gets wooey and it's like it's just charging it in the moonlight kind of thing. And so it sounds very, not scientific, but Dan worked with Marcel Vogel with some extremely expensive and high caliber scientific equipment in a laboratory. And Marcel Vogel invented the magnetic drive on the hard drive, the magnetic coating for the hard disk for IBM. Like that's what he
Oh,
had developed. And
right.
so this is a heavyweight in the computer industry. Like literally the hard drive was because of him. And he patented that. And then I would imagine he made a fortune doing it, but I'm sure he was compensated well. But after that, he was looking for the next best thing. And it was quartz. It led him to quartz. And then living and being in California, you don't talk about quartz for long before somebody pulls out their healing stone. This one is blessed, and it's Atlantean quartz or whatever. So you bump into people, and Marcel Vogel. The story goes, and I could be wrong, totally butcher this, but the story goes that he was at a conference talking about the properties of quartz, and somebody came up and said, "This can heal you," and he was sore. And the girl used it and he said, and he got healed and beyond a placebo. And he said, you know, he went back and wanted to learn the science of what the hell just happened to him.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so meeting Dan, I had him explain the science to me and what was going on with it. And then I started experimenting with it. It's so many conferences I've been to, so many places they have this technologies and they have all these claims, and a lot of them don't do anything for me. And some of them do. I had a guy in Australia hang a copper neck, just a tensity ring, they sell these at all
Yeah.
a lot of conferences. But he hung it right here. And it was a necklace. He said, go ahead and try. I still have it. I bought it off of him then. This is years ago. And it was a necklace and it's got to be about right here, solar plexus. And he hung it there. And he said, "Hold on now. Put your hands, stand with your feet together, and put your hands at your side and stick your hand out like kind of like that." And he said, "Just stand there and try to hold your balance and resist me." And he put his hand in my. I had my hand in this shape, and he put his fist. He pushed me and I'd fall over. And he
Mm.
pushed down. He'd be right next to me and he pushed down. And I said, what are you doing here? What? I don't get it. And then he had me put on the necklace. And it was a copper ring right here. And then he pushed on me and he couldn't push me over. I was extremely strong, resistant to it. And that's really was an eye-opening moment for me. And I thought, in the same way like Marcel Vogel, like, it's got to work. You got to show me, right? I don't just take everything like this. I've had people pull out these plastic devices and I'm going to clear your auric field and everything's going to, all your memories will come back. And I'm like, nothing happened. So I appreciate it, but I appreciate the effort, but I don't see a science there. So putting it all together and then with my own experience they used technology on me. They were experimenting with psychoenergetics in the Inyokern that I went through, that I wrote about in my series Colony and basically all three books. But they were experimenting with it, and I remember very, very clearly something, and that might be why I remember, right? So, um, but I remember very specific technologies. It wasn't, we weren't sitting around, like I always say, we weren't sitting around with candles and a pentagram. It
Right.
wasn't that. It was a technological process that we were going through to induce psychic phenomenon and out of body and remote viewing and perturbing things at the target. Like it was advanced. And I always had remember that. So I'm always going through how does it work?
Well, one of the impressions that I got reading your book was exactly that about the technologies, that they're extremely specific. They know exactly what they're doing, and it's not airy-fairy at all. It's just this is just what we do. This is the technique. This is the method.
Right. Yes. And so to reverse engineer that is proof, right? So if I can remember something that nobody else does, but it turns out that the proof that I've dug up on a lot of things has just other people have worked on in the past and it just fell to the wayside. A lot of when we talk about the consciousness aspects of it, they
Yes.
based a lot of things off the work of John C. Lilly, who was the sensory deprivation tank that we see in the movie in Stranger Things. She's always
Yes,
gonna have some
yes.
salt. That was John Lilly's work early on, and then coupled with CO2 and oxygen deprivation that the Navy had accidentally figured out. So, combat causes a lot of psychoenergetic events to happen for people. The death experience, near death, and actual death experience that the military is often exposed to gave them insight and
Mm,
data to pull from for this stuff. So, consciousness is much different than what we think it is or what we've been sold, and the
mm.
military is aware of it. But they started researching this stuff, and so I've kind of followed in those footsteps. But the obelisks were purely because of Dan Willis and Marcel Vogel's research. Because I looked at the early Vogel crystal, and it was an obelisk. It was a four-sided, 60-degree terminated with a 52-degree, if I'm wrong, on the bottom. And he said it works. It accepts. Quartz is a great memory medium because it accepts piezoelectric charge
Okay.
and remembers it. Water does too. So we are water and we are an electromagnet. Your brain to your vagus nerve to your heart is essentially an electromagnetic generator. So your heart, your biochemical process releases electricity into the cells, the heart a lot, the brain more, or less. But you're a bioelectric, uh, I'm getting the verbiage wrong. Generator. You are a generator. You're giving off electrons and electromagnetic generator. That's the word I was looking for. So he looked at that and he said, well, quartz, if you're in proximity, quartz should be able to record the bioelectric shape of the thought. So when you have a thought in your brain, when you think apple, it's not a picture of an apple, but the neurons that are associated with apple create a shape. The neurons that fire in your brain when I say um, Formula One race car, right? So for you to think about that, the neurons inside your brain fired to call up the memory of that, and it's a shape. It's not a picture of a Formula One race car or the words. It's not a paragraph. It's a shape of neurons that are suddenly electrified.
So a connection between certain neurons that allows you to have recall
Yeah.
of that thing.
Your brain is a 3D computer. Your brain's a 3D quantum computer. It's three-dimensional. So we talk about silicon chips are two-dimensional chips layered in stacks, but they're not really 3D architecture. There for a while, all of the 3D architecture cooling systems, not the chip, but the cooling system were every patent available was taken by the United States military.
Claimed and put on the shelf.
Yeah, you could not develop a three-dimensional computer chip that operates the same way that a human brain does. You just couldn't do it. It was locked up. I think it still is, to be fair. But you make that shape, and if you do it in a correct way, if your quartz is in the near proximity of that bioelectric field, it'll remember the shape.
Wow.
So
Okay. So similar to how water records things.
absolutely, exactly how water records. Exactly right. That's exactly right. It will remember the shape, and it works. And so the difference between water and quartz is that the shape will dissipate quicker in water.
Okay.
So I can do this. So and I wow, I want to get all of my stuff for this and show you. Like, nobody asks me about this stuff. People always want to ask me about the subject matter of my books, but people don't ask me about what I do since then. And I really think it's in many ways just as important, if not more.
Yeah.
This is tea. Uh, so it's water. And so I can hold a thought, an intention. I'm big, intention's everything. So I learned that from living in Hawaii. So if you intended for something good to happen and something bad actually happened, you actually didn't do anything wrong. And if you intended for something bad to happen and something good happened, you actually did something wrong. So your intention supersedes the event. Your
Mm-hmm.
intention supersedes event. Anyhow, so if I have an intention in my head that I want to get over my upset stomach, and what I do is tune in to a time in my life when my stomach was actually quite strong, and remember that emotionally, and then don't think about it in a paragraph, but condensed in a snort. So it seems the universe works in pulses that have all the data in one pulse, like a snort, like a,
Okay.
and then drink the water. And it will actually carry that throughout the body. That shape of electricity goes through the body, and even on a cellular level, you begin to carry that thought. It's an influence.
Okay, a pulse. Now, this is really important. This is like
Yes.
this is because I'm a coach, mentor. I've for years, I've been helping people set intention and imagine, use the imagination constructively instead of destructively, right? But I
Hmm.
mean, this pulse, this snort moment, really got into I felt it. Like, wait a second. This is a detail that you kind of passed over, but it's really important. Yeah, it's like something about the way the universe works. It's not because you have a paragraph in your mind that your intention is going to be powerful, right? And I'm always saying to people, it can't just stay in your mind. It has to be embodied. It has to come down. You have to feel it. And I guess the moment of feeling is that pulse, right? It's the moment of the snort.
An emotional tether.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So we can say, um, man, I don't have a good one off the top of my head. Let's say, we want world peace. We're right now, currently at the filming of this, there's a war going on in, the Ukraine. So we want to do it and set our intention of our meditation to alleviate and for that war to be over as soon as possible. I want the war in Ukraine to be lighter. I want peace to prevail, and I want them to make progress as soon as possible. So I said that's a long paragraph,
Right.
but that's my intention. And your body is recording that electrically in a smaller condensed version. And so then when I want to put it in a piece of quartz, I don't have one nearby I could grab, or an obelisk for that matter, which is made out of primarily, polycrystalline quartz structure. Then that paragraph that I said about the Ukraine in one pulse, all that intention, all that emotion into one pulse, and put that into the quartz. So when you first you have to clear it, You hold your hand on each end, you cause a electric pole on each end, and think of yourself as crystal clear and the
Ah,
quartz as crystal clear, nothing in it, and snort clarity. So it's clear, so it's been cleared. Then you can put your intention. I want to, I remember when my knees were as strong as they could be when I was this fit as I was, when I was athletic, I was 16 and I won the championship. And so my knees were super strong, and I want to remember what that feels like. And I want my knees, everything comes in contact with this, to feel that and snort it into the quartz. And then, literally, because of the shape of the quartz, the double terminus, it has the same effect electrically as a laser diode has photo photonically. So a laser diode has a mirror and a mirror. And this is 100% mirror and this is 60%. And light comes in from elsewhere, and begin the light that finds a 90-degree orients itself into a perfect line, and then eventually escapes through the weaker mirror and is a laser beam.
oh,
So your electrical impulse, that shape of well, piezoelectricity that you put in that quartz in a Vogel crystal has the same thing. So it starts to go back and forth in the crystal, and on one end, it's a different terminus, and it escapes. And so I thought, when I learned all that from Dan, I looked at the obelisk. I have a picture right here, crystal. I'm going to screen share.
yes.
There's the shape.
Oh, I'm not.
So
Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
that's what Marcel Vogel settled on for the shape. So clear quartz, and with a 60 something terminus and a 54 or 52 terminus on the bottom.
We're talking
And
about
then
the angle of the angle.
yes, and because of the structure of the quartz molecule is why it's relevant. So
Ah,
all
okay.
quartz breaks off at this angle, 50. It's 52 or 54, but this angle is what quartz forms naturally. And so what's happening is the electricity just bounces back and forth in there. And out of this steeper end, it eventually creates a beam.
Oh, wow.
And so that's what you're doing. And when you remember what it felt like to have your knees in great shape when you were a kid, and then you put it in the crystal and then point that at your sore knee today, the cellular memory is catching that electrical charge of that memory and recreating it. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Refamiliarizing itself with the correct feeling of being healthy. And so there's other ways to do it. There's other methods when we talk about putting a signal into it. But then I started looking and I thought um, he had a four-sided one. Let me see here. And that doesn't make any sense when we have things like this in nature. And I looked at that and I thought, this is like his original design, but and then I looked and I thought, all of the obelisks in the world that are erected somewhere else, they all came out of Egypt. Nobody built their own obelisk at these big national places. And and then I looked, and they're all made out of the same granite that the Egyptians went through great trouble to only use the red Aswan granite. And I looked at what's that composition, and lo and behold, it's up to, not always, but up to 60% quartz content with a
okay.
ferrous, like an iron ferrous amount in there. So it's a magnetic, and then there's a slight radioactive isotope that is unique to the Aswan granite that's not in other granites. So it was very specific, the granite that they used for this shape. And I thought, well, that kind of leads me on. But you see the building in the background with these things? This is
Yes.
Boboli Gardens in Florence, Italy, is where
Oh,
this
yeah.
obelisk is. And it's got a few things that I started to notice repeated. It has a hat, and it has feet, and it has the same stuff in a base under here with a nearby water supply, and then a building shaped like this array. And I
Oh,
started to notice that, and then in other places, the same thing, the array. So in Karnak, where they all came from, in Luxor, Egypt, is where all the obelisks, when they were first made, were parked. There's an array. There's the hall of the, and then I looked at these are made out of sandstone, which also have a high quartz content.
okay.
All these pillars. But lo and behold, the Vatican's got an obelisk with the same thing, with a hat and feet, iron feet and a hat, and it's from Aswan granite. And the Boboli Gardens one has an array of quartz things around it, another array, and then wait a minute, the National Mall in Washington D.C., that giant obelisk that they couldn't get the right stone to finish it when they got halfway up because of Civil War. And so they delayed it like 50 years or some decades of construction until they could get the right stone that had the right chemical composition. There's documents about that. And
Wow.
and I was like, what's going on here? Wait a minute. And then I started to look at the Karnak site, and I said, wow, it's about that long, and there's other things about this site. It has an archway, and then it had two obelisks side by side, several of them, and they all the way through here. And then it had this array, which nobody really knows why, what this hallway did with all of the pillars in the middle. And
Wow.
I thought, man, and then the Boboli Gardens. I'll tell you the truth. I dated a girl. So here's how this is what turned me on to this one. I dated a girl who dated a guy in Italy, and he was in a secret society and told her about the water in Florence, that the water was well renowned for their wine quality. And then I thought Marcel Vogel also did a wine experiment where he turned junk wine into award winning wine by running it nearby 7 turns, 7 right turns around a Vogel crystal. That, man, I know I just saved it here. That ChatGPT also recommends for making an inductive machine, a self-powering inductive with a capacitive hat with an inductive base that creates magnetic radioactive reactive fields. So I went,
Okay.
whoa, 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 whoa. A lot of things are starting to add up here that don't make sense. And then when I measured this, so this is where the water aerates to the edge of the construction. The obelisk is right here with an array, which is it's called the PT Palace.
Uh-huh.
The array is much the same sandstone columns, just like in Karnak. It's 0.72 miles. I went, that's the same distance. And then I looked again, and we have the Eiffel Tower, the same distance of that array. Um, and then the obelisk of Concord, which is from Luxor. It's called the Luxor obelisk, 0.72 miles. The same thing. You can see these arrays, and these are water pools. I'm going, what's going on here? I don't know if I have these arranged where I can go through them all quickly. Um, but the town Astana, the capital of Kazakhstan, is the same distant increments, and they've dammed up the water here from a small river, and it's right here. This is a quartz This is a quartz component, the monument, Kazakali. But then these are other places, the tower, the Bayturek Tower, and then a fountain. And I'm going, what's going on here? Why is this? Hamdel, New Jersey is the same guy that was the architect, the same guy that designed this site, put that water tower on one end and a water pond on the other. And there are other components. It's the same layout. Um, he designed the
Uh,
St. Louis Arch.
Arch. Okay.
Yeah.
So the 0.72 miles, that represents the total length of the array.
Yes. And well, here's what so here's I'm going to go do the St. Louis Arch. I have a couple of them. Not only is it from this Malcolm Park, but also to the Civil Quartz building to the St. Louis River or the Missouri River, Mississippi River through the arch. So they're trying to recreate these are people that are aware of a technology. But here's the granddaddy of them all. It's the Vatican.
Uh,
And why the Vatican is significant is because the Tiber River was greatly polluted in the 14th century. And so much so that that's what, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, that meant drink the water and get sick.
oh,
It was people, the lifespan of the Roman citizens was shortened because of dysentery. Were pouring raw sewage into the Tiber River, and water quality was a major issue in the 1400s.
okay.
So they had a new pope, and he commissioned the obelisk to be built, and it was completed in, I believe, 1450. It's been a while since I've researched this stuff, so I'm flubbing the exact dates. And about 25 years later, all the water was clear. The Tiber River still has lower water quality, but the water quality problem was solved within 25 years. In that little short time, that was a major thing. And we see the Vatican obelisk has an iron hat and an iron base, and it's the same. This is the array, which is all quartz components, and it's 0.72 miles from here to the river. And I started looking at this going, what is going on? Oh, I'm trying to think of any other ones here that I missed. Here's actually a good picture of the Vatican.
Oh, yeah.
That's a Google Earth image. So it clearly looks like there's a sound or something going on. It looks more like a machine. It's not an exact, but it's a very similar layout to the Karnak one. So we're seeing this array, a long stretch, and then in Luxor back then there was a canal of water that came all the way up here. The Nile River came in here. They ran it up to the front to these two obelisks, and then Washington D.C. is a similar thing. There's our reflecting pool with the obelisk with another part of the array. From here, it's 72 miles, but from here, where it's probably is, it goes into the reflecting pool. And I thought, what the hell's going on here? What's happening? And let me do this. I made a little reel. I don't know if I don't have sound in my screen share, but I made a reel, and this obelisk that I made this out of epoxy and hematite and quartz. I ground up, and I found that it had a very distinct magnetic field, and you can use dowsing rods. And I couldn't believe it, and I did it over and over, and I had so much more. I've made 10 of these obelisks, and it's the same thing. I found the same shape of magnetic field that comes out of all of them, as long as you have a ferrous. Let me get out of here. That's just research stuff. But was able to map that there are basically three bands of a magnetic field of an obelisk. It arranges the magnetic field. So the dowsing rods, if you can, I don't know if you can see me in the recording, you guys, but as soon as you break this plane of the magnetic field, which on my obelisk, that one there goes about 10 and a half feet in each direction. So
Okay.
about 10 and a half feet out from it. If you break this plane, the dowsing rods turn to the same direction. They both go as if because it's spinning, because it's a toroidal field is spinning.
Right.
And then when
Right.
you break the second plane, they straighten out again. And when you get closer, they kind of have a little perturbation at this one, but it's weaker. And then right over the top where all three of these bands are coming out,
Uh-huh.
they cross. So I
Okay.
found that over and over again, and I started mapping that magnetic field. And I thought, why? What is going on? What is the common denominator here? And look at this. And so why the long pool that Karnak had? Why the materials? This has got replaced with quartz. This is a big quartz array in here. I want to stop the share so I can kind of look everybody in the face. I started really crunching the numbers on it, and I thought, is it sound? It must be sound, because when you press quartz, it gives off electricity. That's what piezo electricity is. So we
Right.
have it in our head.
Right. That's the pineal gland.
It's crystalline. So when there's pressure from sound,
Mm.
ooh, it's giving off literally an electrical charge, a weak electrical charge. Quartz does that. Um, I'm flipping through my stuff. I'm so happy you asked me this stuff, Claire.
Right. Well, and I'll just while you're flipping through your stuff, I'll just mention that I mean, I was a Kundalini yoga teacher for many years, and that was a big period of my life where I studied that. And what we're doing in there is stimulating the pineal gland, right, through the movements, through the breath, and through pressure, right, moving the pressure up the spine. And I mean, Joe Dispenza, he teaches that same kind of way of exerting mechanical pressure on your pineal gland to stimulate those crystals that are in there, the quartz that's in there.
That is exactly right. And
And
then
that's creating the piezoelectrical effect which then comes back and it amplifies itself, and that's when you start to have experiences beyond the ordinary. Yeah, through stimulation of the pineal gland. That's a specific.
It causes, well, in other working with Dan Winter, it causes charge collapse. We're all made of charge. Everything is charge. Literally, there is nothing that's solid. Everything is made out of an electron going around a proton, or if I'm saying that right. And the electromagnetic relationship causes a barrier of electromagnetism to the next one. And so that's why if you take, there is so much space in between our atoms that if you took all the 8 billion people on Earth and took all the space out in between them, we would fit inside of a sugar cube. So that's how much wasted space there is in there. This was early. I was trying to map it. I was trying to map what the field looks like for a real obelisk. And this is way off, but it's close. Does that make sense what I just
Way
said?
off, but close. Wow.
So the weight of the obelisk on this Bach is giving off the piezo. So it's the piezo wave is a planar wave, and I don't have a better one here of the shape of the wave. Might be like this one. So up here it's less, but down here the wave kind of goes out. And then the magnetic wave is a carrier for the electron. So there's a magnetic magnetron relationship with the electrons. So they work hand in hand. Is what I'm finding. Anyhow, I
So,
want to get out of this here, and I just want to say this and what I found. When you look at an obelisk harmonically from sound waves, if it can generate a sound wave, which it can, the very, very exterior of one of the, I'm talking about one of the big ones. Let's talk about the Vatican one. If you were to, there's an array that you could beat drums around it, or you could make hammers with quartz and you'd beat them together and they would give off pulses. And those pulses, because of the shape of the obelisk, can go in and they release a pulse, and it's in a planar wave. And what I found is at that distance, 0.72 miles, is about the one wave oscillation of an ultrasonic 227 kilohertz wave. And what that does directly to water is sterilize it. It causes microcavitation. You can't see it. It causes microcavitation, little bubbles, microscopic bubbles in the water that oxygenate it and break apart and kill bacteria in the water. So
wow.
so I'm looking at that result versus these arrays, and then the history of the Vatican one because that's documented. The water quality around the construction time of the obelisk is documented. So I'm deducing that it had something to do with that.
Okay, so then from your perspective, it sounds like the original organic function of obelisks and those arrays was was purification of the water.
And influencing the water. So the other, since the more I go into it, the more it looks like a Swiss Army knife. The other thing that a mystery, they explain it nowadays. They're trying to explain it, but it is a real mystery. The ancient Egyptians kept great records of their grain yields, their
Mm.
harvest crops every year. Because of the way that the Nile worked, the Nile flooded and then came back, so their crops were reliable and they kept meticulous records. And when modern scientists look back on it and go, they didn't have fertilizer or tractors, and we can't make that yield that they had now if we tried. There's a missing component. They've explained it away with they have the hypothesis so they could say, no, it's explained, but it's really not concluded. There's not really conclusive evidence. I'm saying that they were using this array down, the Karnak array, and several others on the Nile to purify the water and oxygenate the water, and it was far more useful to the plants
Uh-huh.
than. And then when you take the Vogel crystal technology and you say that you could put conscious thought shapes into the water, those would translate into the plants and the food supply, and you can alter health. You could make everybody happy or sad. There's a war record. There's an old book. I can't find it. that in Cambodia during the Vietnam War, that there was a village that everybody died. And when the military got there, they found a bunch of dead people and they did autopsies and there was no poison and no cause of death, no trauma, no blunt trauma, nothing. They were talking about, 70, 80 people. But a couple kilometers upriver, they found another small settlement of 20 or 30 guys that were also dead, and they had an array that they were worship. It was black magic that they
Oh,
were doing something to the water. It was an array, like they had an altar arranged to the water. So what I'm saying is the same technology. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like I'm not trying
yep.
to invoke evil here, but I mean you can imbue conscious thought into water for a short time. And they were imbuing it, and the people that drank it got sick from it or became unhealthy. And so we have historical. And then now we look at the St. Louis monument.
Yeah.
It's only a couple miles up from the intake of Anheuser-Busch. That's where they get
Okay.
all their water for the beer. So
Yeah.
these are on major rivers. So, and they're all over the place. So the new Astana, like I said, they dammed the river up and put it there. And when we talk about an ultrasonic wave, a kilohertz wave, they actually have quite an impressive array of three steps of the wave that they can control it. And then the Washington Monument, these long pools like the reflecting pool, the wave can be nearby. It can be a 200 kilohertz. It can be a 180, and the pool will catch it. And so they can imbue the water. And what Vogel found is that in his water experiments is that once the water is ordered, it supersedes the random order of every other water. So you can take a cup of this water and pour it in a lake, and the lake will become what you put in the water, not the other way around, because it's got a higher order of electric
Higher order
spin.
supersedes. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So it will actually entrain the rest of the water
Yes.
because it has the. Okay. So presumably, if they can influence, we're talking about influencing consciousness through the water because water is the physical expression of consciousness. So that can be used for good or for ill, obviously. So are these obelisks nowadays, are they still functioning?
Yes. So the Vatican, when we see the correct arrays, I'm still, so like I said, when I look at how to use one for water, I've got a few experiments kind of set up around the house. There's many different ways that you can do this. So well, they can run just off the Schumann resonance. The other thing that I found, so I had a guy smuggle me some Aswan granite out. I got a
Out of
big chunk
Egypt.
over there,
Oh,
and
wow.
and he shipped it here, and I paid him. I got like 40 pounds of Aswan granite, and what I did is I grinded some up, and I created an obelisk with ground up Aswan and epoxy and quartz and barium titanate and a little bit of magnetite.
How do you know what to put in there, Tony?
I've been hanging out with electrical engineers for a while, and living in Sedona, other people are doing stuff with making these things. It's an industry. But one day I had a trimeter. I have a trimeter. It's downstairs. I should have prepared better for our meeting. I apologize, but
That's
I had a
okay.
trimeter, and I put it on. I was trying for remote viewing purposes. The other thing is all these things overlap. One discovery kind of leads me into another family of things, and I've been doing remote viewing. So I was looking for the EM signature on my porch right out there. So that's my little meditative space there. I go out there and meditate. It's a screened in porch. It's very peaceful, and there's less Wi-Fi and
Hmm.
electromagnetic interference, which really interfere with remote viewing. So I went out there and I took my trimeter and I'm just like checking it out. And I go, "What is this?" There was like all of a sudden there was an electrical charge, like that you see around wall socket outlets. When you
Yeah.
have the
A
meter,
meter. Yeah.
by my microphone or any electrical device, it spikes when you get close to it. And I went, "What is this?" And it was the piece of granite. And I went, "What am I seeing here?" And I was like checking. I was blown away. Ran back in and started asking AI, how is this happening? and it said put it in a Faraday environment and see if it's radiating or if it's re-radiating. And so I have Faraday fabric here also. Being a nerd that remote views, I use Faraday fabric when I remote view as well.
Uh-huh.
So I took the granite and I went out there and I wrapped myself in the fabric in a big blanket and pulled it up and took the Oswan granite in there with me with my trimeter. And lo and behold, it gave no signal. It was zero. It went from 50 to zero.
Okay, so the signal, that means the signal was coming from the granite itself,
No, it's re-radiating it. It was
re-radiating.
picking up my Wi-Fi from way on the other side of the house and
Oh,
amplifying it.
oh,
So, and then I went back in and I said, well, hold on, wait a damn minute. What can it re-radiate? And this is where it gets scary. The RF, so the radio frequency, so RF. So so the obelisk could have been a communication device as
oh,
well. So it could have broadcasted radio. So on top of many other things, what we're talking about, when we talk about quartz and the things that it's made out of, it seemed, like I said, they seem to be a Swiss Army knife, and they seem to be a definite a machine because they're oriented. Some of them are oriented not correct. So there's one in London on the Thames River. The Boboli Gardens one is in Florence. The Vatican one is aimed at the Tiber River. We got Astana, the Mississippi River. There's some in Shanghai, Japan. There's several arrays that are. It's the shape of the array, not so much what it's made of. The original, there's only so many original Aswan obelisks that exist, and they're not making any more. But when I looked at that, it does the RF frequency and it does the biophotonic frequencies.
oh,
And I went, whoa, what does this mean? So this means that it can broadcast an entirely different medium on top of our conscious thought, your biophotonic. So we're giving off light right now. If we turned off in the dark and we sat here, we would both be glowing, but our eyes don't see the wave. The wave is bigger than our pupils.
oh,
So the wave of light that we give off is bigger and physically bigger than our pupils could see it. So the wave doesn't get in our eyes. It's like our pupils are too big, small of a screen, a window screen. And so it's a big, just like the microwave has the little holes.
yeah,
That's what that's doing. The light wave doesn't get through those holes. It gets broken. And so you don't get cooked. That's
oh,
why all of the visible spectrum fits, the wave size fits in your pupil.
oh my gosh, I never knew that.
Right.
That explains so much.
Yes. So your biophotonic light, we are literally glowing. You are literally glowing light because of your chemical reactions that create electricity. Every time oxygen is burnt in your cells and glucose and all the little chemical reaction, it gives off a weak biophotonic light. So so it started me down after years, after a couple years and writing my book about the obelisk. I go, well, this it does biophotonic too, the Aswan granite. And now think about the inside of the Great Pyramid, where it has several layers of Aswan granite, the same granite, the red Aswan granite, and then a sarcophagus in the center of the thing. And then it was covered with limestone, which is inert, like non-conductive. The limestone that was originally on the outside was not, so it didn't let electricity out. It was
Right.
keeping it in. And now there's a structure under it. I go, what does a biophoton do? Why would anybody want a biophoton? And so we happen to have biophotonic centers around the United States. I don't know, a few dozen of them, where it's a therapy and it is extremely beneficial to bask in biophotons. So nowadays we have the technology to build solid state biophotonic generators. But back then they wouldn't. And so this is really dark. And we might have talked about this off camera or on camera the last time. I said, well, firstly, what do they do? And biophotons cause the negative ions around water molecules to arrange.
Okay.
So this is a water molecule. My fist is a ball of water molecule, very small, and it gives off positive and negative ions, pass through it and bounce off of it and live around it. So positive and negative ions. in the presence of biophotonic light, which is weak from me and you currently, it's weak. When we talk about lumens of the output, let's just ran for number just to have a number. It's one
Okay.
lumen of our biophoton, and it's a water molecule that's near me. Water out, it's spitting on my desk, right? My biophotons will cause more negative ions to arrange on the surface of it, like a line of negative ones. And what that does is it makes it not accept. Wow, fuck, I'm just figuring that out right now.
Oh,
It
okay.
causes it to not accept other information. It causes a negative, and so the what's inside of it stays there. It stays more coherent. Oh my God, that's what that does. In order to make the lumens brighter, that from me and you,
Uh-huh.
so it's pain.
Pain.
If I poked you with a poke for that second, you'll become an order of magnitude brighter.
Well, that's a bit like with the plants, right? When they could
Yes,
measure the light coming off of plants and they would tear a leaf, it would go, right?
yes, that's
So
exactly
that's
right.
why they tortured you.
Yeah. Well, or a kid. So I witnessed that. So this is we call them the satanic people that are out there that do these things. But then that's the first thing I thought. I went, man, that's why they torture these people, and then they do it while they're naked. So that's a big secret. Is one of the pieces of evidence when I witnessed this in my book, and I had somebody, when people were not believing me when I said this, somebody that was high up in a satanic religion said, "Describe to me the ritual you saw." And what were they wearing? And I said, well, everybody was naked. They just had a hat on. They were naked because you would get the most of the biophotonics. You would get the most exposure if you were naked. That would be the best for you. And if you were torturing somebody, they're giving off just bright lumens of it. And that seems to explain in a scientific way. Like I said, nowadays there's no need for that. We have the ability to make solid state ones nowadays, but ancient man that had the knowledge and not an infrastructure. I always say that looking at what we're saying here about the obelisks, this is you can't create the obelisk without a laboratory to research, without great understanding of frequencies and molecular things on a molecular level. So the Egyptians didn't do this without a laboratory. So possibly they did it with Stone Age tools, though. So I'm postulating that a society that once had a laboratory and lost it was building a technology for their water with Stone Age tools. So a cataclysm, exactly what we see, exactly like the legends, like a cataclysm destroyed an advanced society that had access to this. That's the only real explanation because where else did it come from? And the amount of advancement. I'm using AI and other things, and deconstructing things that exist, and then I had a unique perspective in my life for the breadcrumbs of it. And I still don't understand all of it, but they just whipped these out. They put through great effort. They were making 40-meter high granite things with Stone Age tools, and so the results were obviously tremendous on water purity. That we have clues. We don't have anything conclusive. We have good clues for it, and then we have, like I said, the satanic stuff, the elite stuff that they were doing. What's the other one? Sex. Sex is your second biggest side. Sexual intercourse would be the second brightest biophotonic, stimulation to the body. So apparently, it's along those lines. But pain is the big one. When I asked where biophotons would come from and what they would do, I should list it right now. But there is a current therapy where you go in these places. A friend of mine, when I was talking about this in one of my groups, one of the members said their parents go to it and they feel great. They had like a
Well,
rare condition and they go to biophotonic therapy, and it's cured them.
I'm wondering if this is, well, the light system, right? It's scalar waves, but it's also photonic energy. It's color and light.
I,
But
I don't think it's the same, but it could be.
but biophotons, can you just distinguish between regular old photons and biophotons? Is that just what is produced by biology? Light is that is produced by biology?
I looked briefly into the what causes biophotons, and they're very hard to read. They can, like I said, now we have solid state biophotonic generation. We have the ability to do that. You can buy one, but it's not like a regular light bulb. No, it's a much larger wave. The wavelength is different. That's why, like I said, we don't see it. So our standard light bulbs cannot make them. It's a
Right.
special thing. I looked into it, like what could I do to make it, and it's algae. You can make bags of algae and slightly electrify it. And when you get the pulses of electricity, the algae is essentially, I mean, giving pain and being
Right.
brighter, and you can expose yourself to these. And it's very good for your health. I mean, there's no two ways about it. What it does to well, and like I said, I'm just now realizing it. I haven't been researching it recently, but it orders all of the water on you to have a kind of a shield of negative ions, which we also find at the bottom of waterfalls. So
Right. Right.
waterfalls creates a cloud of negative ions. Everybody feels great there. So
Yeah.
it's kind of the same family of science. What's going on there?
Okay. So presumably, the what we call loosh, right? Which is this energy or substance that that humans are preyed upon for, might be related to these biophotons, and that might be why pain and suffering. And I mean, when you hear about these
The
satanic rituals,
Spanish,
that
the
it's all
Spanish,
about sex and pain and to generate increased biophotons. But so it's not good for the person who is emitting the biophotons. It's good for the people who are sucking the loosh off of the
in close
person.
proximity, yeah, in close proximity in the dark. Um, Also, I think, if I'm not wrong, that the Spanish Inquisition, when they were torturing people, they would do it naked.
Hmm.
So that would incline me to believe that they knew what they were doing in that regard. So it's as sick as it sounds. That's exactly how the science would work. It would have a slight biophotonic effect on you.
But what about elevated states? Do elevated states also cause an increase in biophotons?
No, so it's a physiological process. So you're when you're in an elevated state, you're actually detaching. It's like less of a physiological thing when you're talking about elevated, like in a meditative state.
Well, yeah, but I guess what I really mean is the heart. If you're in an expanded heart space, if you're feeling a lot of love, not necessarily, detaching up here, like I don't, like dissociating from your, not dissociating, but leaving your body behind. I'm talking about being fully present in your body with an open heart and feeling everything. Would that have a
So
similar effect?
So yes, so we know from the Kirlian photography that which is basically what we're talking about. Your light, there you go, Kirlian photography, which they're very expensive. I would love to play with one around my
Mm.
obelisks that I've made. I haven't
Yeah.
even got into how they work, how that one works, and it does work. The Kirlian photography shows us that people have different output anyway. So some people have a big giant field and some have a lower field, and ailments that you have show up. So
Yeah.
if you have a problem in your spleen, that area is very dim, and they can tell you exactly what's wrong with you through the Kirlian photography. So that's directly using biophotonic emission to diagnose and to do therapy. Like they weren't doing the therapy with with the photography early on, but now they can. Um,
Right, right. So I guess the eye of the camera has to be smaller than the pupil. It has to see the light.
I believe bigger.
Oh,
Yeah, the bigger. I believe it's bigger than the
oh yeah,
pupil.
because it
The
it has to
wavelength
fit
is
in there.
bigger. Well, and
Right.
then that's the other thing we're talking about is the wavelength. So the obelisk can also create wavelengths that are 0.72 miles big. That's what I'm talking about here, is one wave that lasts and it's hitting the water as the waves cross at the other end. And that's where
Right.
you're seeing the maximum effect of it actually affecting the water.
Right.
That's
The
why the array is
penetration.
that big and everywhere it goes.
Okay.
Everywhere that they built one of these arrays, it's locked into the same size next to the river that they're aiming it at.
Okay. So obviously, the people who built these arrays knew what they were doing. They
Yeah.
knew. And so in modern cities like Washington, the architects of Washington clearly knew what they were doing because that is a constructed city. It didn't grow organically, really. It just, was built. So
Yes.
what so my question is, like where do you see the line between obelisks as organic consciousness tools and or and obelisks as hijacked components of technological intelligence now?
I think that they're a Swiss Army knife of a certain bandwidth of energy. So, in other words, it's a fine energy. It's a fine bandwidth that we don't use. In the modern man isn't really using these bandwidths very well. I could be wrong. I hope could be a tech nerd out there that would correct me on this. That's fine. But we're definitely not using them the way that they did. We're not purifying water. We're not affecting it. We're certainly not doing anything like Marcel Vogel pioneered and proved in a laboratory repeatedly. And then a college ran off with his, a private, like a community college, a department ran with his work and proved it greatly as well.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Um,
if we know what, I mean, if the architects of Washington, for example, knew what they were doing, but we're not using it, we're not taking advantage of those bandwidths, then what are they doing with them?
well, I'm saying they were using them, but we don't. It's not public knowledge. It's secret knowledge. It's occult knowledge. So imagine imbuing the water of an entire city and making everybody feel angry.
That's where I'm going with it. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
thinking
So
they are using it, but they're not using it for good.
and then they put out so and so's thing is in town. We're having the vote. We're voting, and if you want to squash this terrible thing that you're angry about, you know, then you vote for me. And like it's subtle. Well, not only that, but in ancient times, controlling the peasantry, the overall mood of it, I mean, it's very valuable to an elite, to a leader, to say, we need soldiers. There's a war on the horizon. We need everybody to start making babies. Like, or I need them to get mad and get out of here. We need to get
Mm.
the people that aren't serious out of here. Like, there's many reasons on the sun you can think of that you would want to use something like this to imbue water with just an emotional context,
Mm,
an
mm.
emotional manipulation that they
So
can do.
to imbue the water, but also to imbue anything crystal, anything that has
Well,
crystal.
so it's the same exact thing, but when you charge a crystal, it stays longer.
Yeah.
It could be a weeks or months, and you charge water, it could be a couple days.
Right.
So that's
Right.
the same exact thing. It's this exact same thing. I'll give you another one. So let's do the cup. So you saw I had dowsing rods in the.
Yeah.
I
In the
want to tell
video.
you guys this for anybody that is watching. Actually, hey, can we pause for a second?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's
Okay,
pause.
hold on 1 second. Okay, I grabbed a couple prop items and I want to show you guys this. And you can use any old crystal or and a cup of water, get a solo cup and some water. You can do this, but I'm gonna use my tea for example.
Okay.
And I'm not gonna do it live here because I'm not gonna walk around a camera. But you guys can do this yourself, okay? Cup of water, regular old water, and you want to kind of clear it, the clearing thing. So you imagine yourself as fully crystal clear. That no energy, everything in me is clear, there's nothing wrong. And you imagine the water's clear and it's the snort. You think of all that clarity and then snort it into it. Okay. Water's clear. And then you do the same thing. Here's my A Vogel crystal. And you kind of hold it like this and create a circuit. There's an
Okay.
electrical circuit now. And it's the same thing. You want to hold it up in this area where your own crystalline stuff is held. And you're creating a little puff of piezoelectricity that goes out, a little wavelength. And it's clear, right? So then you take it and you kind of create another. He said to hold it on the facets. Sorry, I'm doing it wrong. Like on the pinky and on the facet of the crystal.
Okay.
And you can give it a little squeeze and you put in whatever you want. They say that love, so the intention of love would charge collapse, either super peace or blissful, like a loving intention.
Hmm.
It's probably works like the biophotons, that it's louder
Yeah.
electrically. And so charge collapse also agrees with this, the Dan Winters physics. So a loving intention that is just healing. And you put a loving intention into it and let it sit for a second. Now you can take it, and that electricity is bouncing back and forth. It's the shape that I was thinking that my
Yes.
brain gave out, and it's going in there and it's escaping. And I'm going to point it to the water, and you just kind of charge the water with it, and then think about pushing all the electricity into the water and giving it another sort and pushing it. And you can squeeze on it. When you squeeze it, it actually generates electricity. Put it in the water and then let it sit for a few seconds. And get across the room in an empty room. And like I said, I'm not going to do that. I could do this, but I've done this 100 times and it works every single time. It's never failed. When you go back with dowsing rods, I like to hold them close to me so that there's no chance that they will. But other people, it's natural. Kind of lock your arms and be honest with yourself. This isn't a cheat, but you can go back, and when you walk closer to the water, it will do the same thing. It'll do this like the obelisk did, and you'll get close and it'll cross. And then if you wait 10 minutes, when you get farther up, it'll do this. It grows. What I'm saying is the field grows from the water over 30 minutes.
Oh,
So the
wow.
water is so when you first snort it into the water, the surface of the water gets the charge and is giving off the EM field. It's growing. But as it permeates through the water over 15 to 30 minutes, it grows and it actually creates a field. And like I said, it's the same thing. When you get out to the edge of the field, these will go the same way because it's a spinning toroid.
Right. Right.
And then you'll break through the exterior and they'll straighten out. And when you get above the water, they'll cross. And you can mess with that on your own. And that just is proof that these work. That what I'm saying, that your mental intention structuring the water in an electromagnetic way is real. So there's absolute
That's
proof,
so
and you can.
important. That's so important, because that shows us how powerful our intention really is. We are so bombarded by toxicity and attack, through all these different vectors and everything that's falling down from the sky and the water and the pesticides and the mind control and all of that. It's easy to get overwhelmed. But what I always try to remind myself of and share with others is that, we're more powerful than that. We're so much more powerful than that. We just have to realize it and start focusing our intention, start knowing that, and to have a real physical measurable way that you can see that your intention has entered the water and is amplifying. That rocks. I mean, that is so, we need that.
I couldn't believe it the first time I did it, and like I said, I've done it dozens of times, 50, 100 times. I'm there for a while. Every time somebody came over, I was like, "You got to check this out," and I look at this, and I would always show people. Now it's like old news to me, but it shows that we are an electromagnetic engine. We're
Yes,
creating
we are a
electromagnetic energy,
generator.
a generator, yeah, and we do a lot of maybe that's why they sell us on that bleak outlook of the world.
Well, oh, absolutely, because we're generating the whatever is going on in here is being amplified in our own toroidal field, right? And I love how I don't love it. It's awful, but I'm like, okay, you said it. I'm a generator. You're a generator. We human beings are generators, and we've been told that we're consumers, right? We've been
Yes,
told that we're empty, that we have nothing in us, that we need to get, that we need to
yeah.
acquire and consume. It's the complete
Take a pill.
inversion. Yeah.
Yeah. Take some pills.
we've got it all in ourselves, right? But
Yes.
it
Yep.
depends on what we're literally generating in our mind and with our intention and our emotional field and everything, because we're under so much pressure, so much density of what we're dealing with right now on the planet. It's super, super intense. If you start going down a spiral, that is not positive, then yeah, I mean that's what we're generating, and we just don't realize the power that we have.
It's true. Well, and when we look at it, I would imagine that emotional pain does give off biophotons as well.
Oh, for
So
sure.
intense emotional pain is the same, probably it's a physiological response to it. It's probably to alert others in nature. We probably adapted that way so that if one of us is getting eaten by the lion, the other rest of us can feel it biophotonically from the bright light that is over the corner. It's literally information carried through light that we feel. You have to feel it and not you can't because you can't see it.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
I'm reasoning this in real time with you.
I
Um,
love it. Uh,
so that was just one thing from just hanging out with people that led me down a road of discovery for it. So the obelisk behind me, again, I was like, well, I want to build one. I want to try this. And when I started seeing this, I thought, what do we do with this? And so Dan Winter was a big help, and other people that I spoke with were a big help. And I started, I acquired the component. They were expensive to do, but what I did was take a piezo pickup and run it through a Bluetooth little box and put it at the bottom of the obelisk, like my diagram came up with where the magnetic field is. So a lot of things I don't know exactly what they're doing. I just know they do something. So I arranged for them to happen. But anyhow, I put a little piezo pickup, and then if you run it through shungite, it greatly increases it. So a little tiny piezo pickup that makes a little sound. If you play a song on it from your radio, from your MP3 player, and you play a song, it's just very quiet. Boop, boop, you can barely hear it. But you put a piece of shungite and it's letting the electrical signals out of it. It greatly amplifies it. I put that on the bottom of the obelisk and I play harmonics through it, isochronic harmonics. And when we mimic the Schumann resonance, the 783, which is theta for brainwaves, when you mimic it and you sit inside that 10-foot bubble of a magnetic, people's remote viewing scores went up.
oh,
So,
interesting.
so I have people that are remote viewers, and we have a scoring system, and somebody that averages 12 to 14 every time, I put them in front of the obelisk, and then all of a sudden it's 17s, 18s. And
Wow.
so, because it's not just listening to the sound and going in through your auditory command, but it's permeating your cells, your cellular level, your whole body. And because of the quartz content, all those vibrations on that pulse are creating electricity from the piezo effect from the quartz being mechanically vibrated. And then that little super weak electricity is riding the magnetic bands. You know, never can pronounce it. The magneton, magneton. The little the electron version of the magnetic spectrum. Anyhow, I always pronounce it wrong. I don't have the word for it. But the electrons that the quartz gives off that are in the same hertz as the recording ride the magnetic because otherwise they wouldn't go far.
Okay.
If I just did it in only quartz, the electrons wouldn't go very far. So when it's in a ferrous thing, which is a ferrous material, it rides the magnetic band and goes out, like I said, about 10 feet from an obelisk that size. And we can measure it with these. We can measure it by walking up to it. And I can hand them to anybody in the house and they can walk the same distance. And when we run the harmonic that your cells give off electrically when they divide, it's in the 53 hertz spectrum. When we run that harmonic, I've ran the obelisk next to where we sleep, and people have gotten better. It fools your cells into thinking they're dividing, and you begin to heal on a cellular level. It's like it stimulates cellular reproduction.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's been very healing. Some people, were including myself, but I'm also not in line to get sued by the FDA or claim that I'm medical treatments or this is not a medical treatment. I don't know the legal. Nowadays, you can't do stuff like this. You can't tell people you have a medical something that'll fix them.
Yeah.
You go to jail. So what I'm saying is we've had some positive results in doing so.
Yes.
So I have a
Yeah.
suite of things that I can add to those concentration, gamma, hertz, just different things that mimic different brainwave states. So when you're concentrating or reading, you can play that with the obelisk nearby and have a nice little reading nook. And that
Okay.
is something that
So
came along. So I've sold
so
a
it's
few of them.
yeah, yeah. So like for example, if you're listening to binaural beats and you're sitting near the obelisk, it's going to amplify whatever's coming off you. I'm just talking in like super layman's terms.
Very, very weakly. So I would play it through the obelisk. So the obelisk
Oh,
actually has a speaker with the shungite enhancer that causes a much stronger piezo output. So if you're listening to a binaural, let's say and I'm just throw out like a 40 hertz for concentration, close to, like a gamma, 50 hertz in the gamma spectrum is when you're concentrating and you're doing a lot cognitive load when you're working, when you're most awake. And you're listening to that because you're going to read or whatever it is. But it's only going in your ears. And it's your brain is getting entranced to that. And so it's right here. So this much of you is tuning into that, which is very powerful, very effective. When you run it through the obelisk and listen to it, now your whole body is getting that in electrical in an so it's like taking a bath in the sound. And
right.
it's basically converting the sound into static electricity that's the same hertz as the sound of what you're listening to. So your entire so when you're listening to it, only your brain that's connected to your ears, your brain cells are getting the effect. But when you put in the obelisk, you have other neurons and other brain cells in your body throughout your digestive tract and down. Those are getting it too. And so
Okay.
I found it's an effect. It's a real thing.
It's a resonance. It's a greater resonance.
People that come over, I've entertained people, and had one on the kitchen on the coffee table on, and I say and they go, and nobody notices. It's not like you can feel it, but what happens is, out of a few dozen people that visited, they go. I'd show them the house. I had a long in Sedona. I had a long house. And I said, "Well, come on in. This is my office, and I do all my shows here. And this is the other room. This is the guest room." And they'd go to where the obelisk goes. Man, I really like it in here. This room's got a great vibe. They would say, and then so I would set them all down, and then I would turn it off. And a few people, not everybody, a few people would be like, "What did you do?" They wouldn't even know. I would just unplug it. And they go, "What did you do? Something feels weird. I feel sick." They would
Oh,
feel they would feel it missing. And a few people, Lily Nova came over and Jean Charles Moyen,
uh-huh.
and they specifically, well, they walked in the room and went, right, what is going on here? They would go, what is this? And then we'd be talking, I'd turn it off and they would go, they would immediately know it. So some people can feel it better than others, is what I'm saying. Like some people can, it's very subtle and some people didn't know. It's like, and I would try with people. So you didn't feel anything? And they wouldn't. So it's just a condition, individually we feel energies differently.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you mentioned last time we spoke that some weird stuff was going on in your house in Sedona. Did the obelisk mitigate the energies that were coming at you from that other array?
There were some things. So shungite did it. So I surrounded myself with a ton of shungite, and that did mitigate some things. And then I did run the obelisks near me, on each side of the bed, and then I would run them at night, and I still do. So I got a really bad. And again, this is not medical advice. Sorry for disclaimer purposes, but I got a really bad poison oak
Mm.
recently. I got a gnarly rash and I was getting swollen. And when I did they were like, go to the doctor and get on steroids. And it was getting worse and worse. I think we might have talked about this last time. It was
I remember
getting
you
worse,
mentioning it.
worse
Yeah.
and worse. And I grabbed that obelisk and I set it up. I put a bunch of them on the bed and ran it. And then the next morning it broke and it started getting better and better.
Okay.
Like it was that night that I ran the out because it was spreading. It was very inconvenient.
Well, and so when you say run the obelisk, you were running certain frequencies
Yeah, the healing
through
frequency.
through the
So
obelisk.
the ones that I've sold, I sell with four frequencies: learning, concentrating, working, meditating, and healing.
Okay.
And so those are different frequencies that are, conducive to those mindsets.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, the biophotonic stuff I really want to get into next, but again, I got to tool up. I keep thinking of these when I do this stuff, and I go, man, I can make money. This would be a great seller. I can make money selling them. But then I make a couple, and then I keep researching new stuff. I'm not a businessman on that end. I'm not. They are expensive to make. So on a scale of piezo output, quartz itself is like 16 to 18. And when you add barium titanate is 1600
What?
piezo output. So I put a cup or so in each one, and it's very expensive to get.
Right.
I had to get it from China, and it's very expensive. So I put that in there, and then getting the quartz ground down to nano quartz is a huge laborious process. I went to Tucson and bought like 200 pounds of quartz diodes. There's one.
Oh,
That.
okay.
So I
Yeah.
bought a ton of those, and I bought a machine that grinds them up, and then you got to sift it out to get the really fine powder. So it's difficult. They're not easy to make, for
Wow.
sure.
Sounds very
And
labor intensive.
it is. It is for each one. And I sold one, told two of them to one person, and it took me forever to fulfill the order because there's just so much to it, and I felt bad. So I won't sell them like that again. I've got three of them that are on deck, and I'll list them as they come. But
Right.
it's there's other shapes. Learning from that technology, so you should be able to go into the ultrasonic harmonics and regrow nerve endings.
Oh my gosh.
So it should be able to do it in a bath, like an obelisk that you put in the bathtub with you and turn on. Or it won't be an obelisk shape. It doesn't need to be the shape. The obelisk shape seems to be for a harmonic cascade. So, like I said, it's a Swiss Army knife.
Oh,
The obelisk is not, they didn't build it for one purpose. It had several purposes. So the science behind it shows me that the more I look into it, there's more things you can do that are optimal for the actual Egyptian ones. But it should be able to take the same technology and put something in the bathtub with you. And for people that have, nerve endings problems, nervous disorder, you can regrow the nerves. It can
what
stimulate
about
nerve growth.
that sounds amazing. And what about just occurred to me when you said bathtub? Do you think there's a use for this kind of technology in getting nanotech out of people?
Well, you'd have to look. So nanotech is not a one umbrella. There's a lot of different things you could do there, but absolutely you can perturb things. What'd be neat is to make a real magnetic one.
Hmm.
So the other thing is certain size obelisks. So I'm looking at the harmonic one that's specific for harmonics to cause the water. I'm actually have the drawn up one to build one and build. I have one. I have a passive one built out in my yard, but I'm not really testing it, but it's passive. It basically is using atmospheric charge and then converting that. So I don't know what'll happen. Maybe, as time goes by, we'll see if the grass grows better around it or something.
Right.
But it was just like kind of mess around. But I want to make like a very magnetic one, and that would do things like that. So a huge electromagnetic one that you could tune to different frequencies would be.
Okay. And you'd
Well,
be
you know what?
then
No, a lot of
attracting.
guys have that already. So the PEMF devices that everybody, you can buy a pyramid all over the place, and they're expensive. They have the mats. The PEMF therapy is kind of the same thing. It's using a hertz through electrical pulse, but it's magnetic pulses, not the piezo, not the static electricity, but it's a magnetic pulse, and that's actually an effective therapy. That's a good therapy. I want to put one in the base. I actually have designs for a little coil to put it in the base so that it does both. So a PEMF all in a bubble around it. And they'd be nice to set up and then make even a lamp, its own pedestal. Like I have designs to do all that stuff. But as
Wow.
I discover, Sun Tzu said, as victories mount, opportunities multiply.
Yes.
And that's kind of what's been happening to me. Once you learn one thing, the possibilities multiply, and I start looking at all of them. So it's not like I'm just bullheaded, like this is my obelisk company. I've just learned the technology and I built it to test it. And I'm on to a few other things recently. And I'm always going back to remote viewing because that's what I love to do. And we've made a lot of progress with that recently as well. So learning how charge collapses has led me to reinforce a membrane theory. And so there's in physics, they haven't really sorted out the universe. So they have theories that don't make sense. They haven't disproved. But with remote viewing, the near future and the methods around that, it really lends to a membrane theory or brain theory. And just recently, with some discoveries with remote viewing experiments that did that, that really reinforced membrane theory, I I don't know, I'm going down a whole new road of research in that regard too.
Wow.
So that one's like hot off the press. Anyhow, it'll come back to the obelisk with a correct charge, with the correct charge harmonics for to do things like that.
Well, I
I'm
feel
getting
like
tongue tied.
I still have a million questions because it's all so interesting. But now you said in your next book, are you addressing this kind of thing in your next book?
Yeah, so I've got to get it all all these ducks in a row. I know I'm a scatterbrain, and I own it that I am a scattery brained person, and but I got to get all my ducks in a row because some of this technology is very useful, especially we talk about passive water treatment.
Hmm.
So we're chemically treating our water with fluoride and chlorine dioxides.
It's like
So
so
we're
stupid. I mean,
chemically treating our water, and we don't have to. We could set these up around. We could set these up here and there, and the water would be oxy. Not only would it be healthier and sterile, but it would be oxygenated as well. So
well,
we don't oxygenate our water.
have you heard of the guy? Forgot his name, but he's a water scientist. And he several times I've thought of him when you were talking about the fields and everything, and because he uses crystals and pyramids to vortex water, and that purifies the water, and not only purifies the water, but it generates a healing field
Yes.
all around he's make they're like art, they're really beautiful, and he uses colored light, and I mean, so these are the same principles in action.
Yeah, I'm not inventing anything. I'm just trying to figure out how it works and
Yeah,
going in that
well,
regard. And then looking at history, it looks like they knew back in Egypt, ancient Egypt, 2000 BC. It looks like they knew this and they had huge facilities to do it on a macro level for the entire Nile.
yes.
And but no,
Well,
I'm definitely there's a lot of people out there that have really good stuff. There's water companies that have there's a jug and you put jugs around them and they're each charged. And you can imbue water, and if you drink it all the time, it's the same as praying for your food.
yeah.
Praying over your food changes the water molecules in it.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
It's the same thing.
but partly what I'm getting at here is that I mean, you have back engineered all of these things that you remember, because that's part of your journey to go back and like fill in the blanks, and I remember this, and how can I recreate it? How can I, and I totally understand that that's how you've come at all of this, and now, it's just developing more and more. But we must already have all of this technology available. I think all the technology is already here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Well,
they're just not letting it out.
they're just keeping it for themselves. Exactly. The
Yeah.
people that have had this all through history. The Egyptians had the Vatican, which turned up with this array in 1454, I think is when they erected it, had all the Egyptian scrolls. So the Library of Alexandria and the
Yeah.
Egyptians, when Rome took over Egypt, when the Romans conquered Egypt, all of the scrolls and the knowledge ended up in the bottom of the Vatican. And then here we have the Pope getting an Egyptian obelisk in his town where everybody's dying of dysentery, and 25 years later the water is just fine.
Yeah.
Like I know that it's not conclusive. I understand that I'm speculative about a lot of things, but I mean, there's only so many things that speculate before you have to take notice. And again, with the little experiments, like I said, with the Vogel crystal and doing that in water, we are seeing an easy way to perturb and prove that we're perturbing the way water works, the energy, the electromagnetic spin of water. And that means people, and that means large water supplies, and on and on and on. And, there's more, but a lot. But basically, quartz is a huge quartz crystal is a huge has a huge influence on water and water
Yeah.
quality. So these things all came together. I'm just noticing it from what I remembered and from the people that I hung out with. I guess that's the other thing is I can't take all the credit from memory. A lot of the people that I've met along the way have taught me a lot of things, and so I'm just putting it all together.
It's amazing. Well, I mean, I just love the work you're doing. And I mean, I know that you have a lot of projects and that you're moving, you're just developing and moving on to new things, But I kind of still hope that you be able to sell some of these
Well, like I
because
said, I
I'd
got
be
three of them down
interested.
there. I have one with the Oswan granite. It's a beautiful red color, and I still have a bunch more to make that. They're actually pretty enjoyable to make. Like if you pick a day and make a craft day and if I sit out in the garage and just make them, it's actually quite enjoyable. Just put on music and mess around in the garage. It's not tough,
Yeah.
but it's time. And
Yeah.
then recently it's been cold. You have to do it at a right temperature to pour them. So yeah, and it's also hard. It's also complex to explain to somebody that doesn't know.
Yeah.
If you're talking about a product and they go, "How does this work? What does this do?" And I said, "Well, you're not going to feel much, but it'll have an effect overnight. You just leave it on." I like to turn them on while I'm working around the house, and I'll put a gamma frequency in there, and I like them on. The first time I did it with the healing frequency, I tested. I put it for an hour, and to see, and we were kind of like, "Is it going to mess us up?" And we were like, nothing happened. So I said, well, I'm going to do it for 10 hours and I'll just leave it on while I go to sleep. And technically it should be a field. And I did. And then after the third night, uh, my girlfriend, who had a really bad, like a bladder infection and was always in pain even after being treated, after the
Oh,
break, correct, she always had a pain in her bladder. And for a long time, for like a year, she was in
oh,
constant dull pain. And on the third day, she said the pain's gone.
wow.
And she went, "Oh my God!" She thought I was kooky, and she was like, "You're a genius." She was like in shock. She walked around in shock the whole day. She was like, "I can't believe you did that." That's what happened, and myself too. And I had physical problems that went away. It doesn't cure you. It helps you.
Yeah.
And so to explain that to somebody and market it is really challenging. So to do it on a scale where I could have a shop and we made them all the time, it's a big challenge to go to that level. So it's a
Yeah.
hobby right now. The harmonic the software I bought, well, I talked about this last time for the learning company that I'm getting going, media.
Yeah.
I bought the audio software and hardware, and that let me make the binaurals and it let me make the audio stuff to do that. But those binaurals and the subliminal stuff are really effective, and that company is going well actually. So Scion.com is going good, and we're going to have a complete makeover by the end of January. It looks like it'll go live, and we're going to introduce 3 or 4 new products there. But that's like an ongoing thing, and I add the brain entrainment
Yeah.
with white noise, and then music. We talked about this, but with
Yeah.
subliminals. with
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
phase cancel subliminals, and I just did the last one I just finished last week was for stress, and it works. I'll
All
be
right.
I'll be damned if it works if I find myself listening to it and then not really caring about what happened the rest of the day. Like you
Yeah.
kind of decouple from it. Like, yeah, I don't care. I don't see why that's going to be a problem. And I go, it's funny because I'd be worked about this last week, but yeah, I think that'll work out. It's the stress one, and it's a new form of, not a new form, but it's like It's a form that we don't get exposed to much of our own self-hypnosis, like a
Right.
subliminal programming for your benefit. We get subliminally programmed for somebody else's benefit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's what that
exactly.
is. So
So
yeah, baby steps.
are those available now for
Yes.
download? Okay.
Scion.com. Actually, the stress one is on there right now. So yep, on Scion.com. But that website, because we just threw it together, like I said, I stumbled upon these and I thought this is a good idea, and I put them on my Patreon, and people ate them up, and so I wanted
Hmm.
a public site that doesn't. I don't. I'm trying to get away from these things being tied to my testimony of aliens and such.
Right.
I want to
Right.
reach the masses, so we created Scion, and it's clunky and it's grown, and it really is a winner. So you run with your winners. And so
Yeah.
I'm having a complete redesign on the web. It'll be a good looking site here, and by the end of January, it's going to be really professionally done. So
Cool, cool. Well, by the time we air this, then it should be done and we can put the info in and people can benefit from that.
check
Fantastic.
it out. I'll say this to the people watching. Check it out. If there's anything that you want, you can always contact us there, because I intend to at least put out one product a month or one every 2 weeks until we develop an app that'll actually generate its own
Oh,
thing. So there's a lot of
that
things. The app will be you can prescribe what you want, and it'll assemble it and play it for you. And so there'll just be an
amazing.
endless thing. So that's that, because some days are different than others. Someday, today I'm going to be presenting, I'll be on stage. So I need to get over my fear, and I need to get busy, and I need to concentrate. Boom. And it'll assemble those with the subliminal scripts and play it. So you can self prescribe what you're trying to do for yourself, and it'll just reinforce your intentions.
I love it. That's such a great idea.
And it's a ways away, but I already have an early version of it that's promising.
Fantastic. Wow.
Oh, let me
Well,
think.
thank you so much, Tony. This has been amazing and so much food for thought. And I just feel so privileged that you have shared this time with me, given me so much of your time.
It's the other way around.
All of us.
It's the other way around. People don't let me nerd out, and I was at a loss for words a lot today. I was kind of unprepared, but I think you guys got the gist. And
Oh, for sure.
I work on this stuff all the time, and I don't really get to talk to a lot of people about it. So thank you for having me, and let me nerd out for a bit. It was cool.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love a good nerd out myself. Yeah, it's been really fun and yeah, I'm very grateful. Thank you so much, Tony.
Okay, thank you.
So, to me, this conversation is really about reclaiming the architecture. What he shared with us is nothing less than a reframing of what it means to be human, of what it means to live inside a world where consciousness, matter, and intention are not separate. Listening to him describe how quartz remembers the shape of a thought, how water carries emotional signatures, how obelisks create magnetic and acoustic fields that affect our biology and our minds, and how our bodies themselves are electromagnetic engines. You begin to understand that none of this is abstract. It only feels abstract when you don't know anything about it. When the actual technology, is not mainstream, not known. But this is the architecture that we live in. And while some of these systems have been used throughout history in ways that distort or suppress our sovereignty, the deeper invitation of this episode, I think, is pretty clear. When we understand the mechanisms, we reclaim the capacity. And when we reclaim the capacity, we reclaim the field. We start to remember how powerful we are. We have all the power. If intention can shape water, then of course it can shape your cells, your health, your life, your timeline. They told us that in What the Bleep Do We Know many years ago, right? We've always known this somewhere. If only we would just believe it and concretize it for ourselves. If consciousness interacts with matter, then you are not at the mercy of external structures or narratives. We are not consumers. We are generators.
How many times have you heard consumers, 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 consumers? We are not consumers. They want to hypnotize you into believing that that's what you are. We are generators. And it's time to remember that. Remembering that may be the deepest technology of all. So thank you for listening. Thank you to Tony for the generosity, the curiosity, the unfiltered intelligence that he brought into this space and the realizations that he was having in real time. I love it. Amazing. If you'd like to explore his work further, including his binaural frequencies, consciousness tools, and upcoming research, you'll find his links in the show notes. Until next time, stay sovereign, stay awake, stay in your heart, and as always, walk in grace.
You've been listening to The Grace Space. To amplify this field, you're welcome to like, subscribe, or share. Thank you.